Hello and welcome to this Retail NZ webinar. I'm Greg Harford, the Chief Executive of Retail NZ, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Celena, the Chief People Officer for Mitre. Now, the theme for this webinar this morning is on well-being and personal well-being as we retailers approach the busy season. We know that we've had COVID restrictions come out of the way, and we know that mental health has been critically important over the last couple of years. We've got the Shop Nice campaign going to support retailers and make customers aware of the fact that there's real challenges out there, and we're asking people to shop nice. But we want to bring attention really to busy seasons like Christmas and Black Friday coming up, and talk about how we can support the well-being of retail business owners and retail staff. So Celena, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Greg. It's an absolute pleasure.
Now, look, Mitre a big cooperative business. You've got stores around the country and a very large number of people involved. What do you think it looks like to make sure that you've got a work-life balance in place for busy times for retailers and staff?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah, we're over 7,000 team members around the country now, and in all communities around New Zealand with our Mitre brand and our Mitre Mega brand. And I think work-life balance is so different for each individual. That's the first place to start, really. It can mean very different things for very different people. And for me, making sure it's right for retail is really about getting to Christmas Day and actually being able to enjoy it and not feeling like that's the one day you've got to sleep. Because lots of us in retail do the crazy hours ahead of Christmas, and shopping centres and malls, etc., push the long hours. So I think if that's our goal, let's get our team members to actually be able to enjoy their family and their whānau for Christmas Day. That would be the biggest one. Some of the things in retail that are just coming back to basics are really helpful. Planning your rosters. It's all very well for us to say when we're facing a really tough recruitment market at the moment. Actually finding enough folks, particularly the seasonal workforce that we depend on, is really challenging. But if we get those rosters as right as we can, particularly rostering breaks and making sure that they happen for folks so that people can take a genuine rest off the floor. It's a busy, hard job being in retail and challenging with customers, as you say, all the Shop Nice campaign that we're supporting in Mitre going behind that, but rostering, making sure we've got that right. And when I was talking to my team around this the other day, actually, it's more than rostering. It's thinking about the specialist people that you need, folks like key holders, folks like leaders who are going to take the escalations when customers are concerned or have a complaint off the challenge of your frontline people. People like your payroll team, have you got them available so that when it gets to that crunch time, you've actually got the right people rostered in the right roles as well. So I would suggest come back to basics of rostering and see if we can meet people's needs around their rosters to make sure they're maintaining that balance.
And obviously, rostering is one part of the equation, but it is a really busy time of year. There's a lot on for people. Have you got any tips on how to manage situations when it seems that an employee might be struggling a little bit just with the sheer volume of life and activity that tends to happen at this time of year?
Yeah, I think it's a real challenge, and I think as leaders, sometimes it's a really scary conversation to have. You might notice something, but you're not quite sure, should I say something or shouldn't I? And I really encourage leaders out there, retail leaders, to ask the questions, to really have that cup of tea moment, have an aside private conversation to find out. If we come from a place of really deep care, I care about you, you're an important part of the team, I've noticed X, Y, and Z behaviour, how can I help? Often breaking the ice can be really important. And I think it's really about thinking creatively around the type of support. What I see happen is sometimes we think people need time off as a default, and I'd really challenge us to think about asking the question, what do you need? Because often work can be the place of safety or be a place of consistency that folks who are going through a hard time outside of work actually find that real passion in what they do every day at work. So taking that away from them can be a negative outcome. But I really suggest leaning in and having a brave conversation to check in. And lots of us have got things like the employee assistance programs. There's several providers to have that available so people can reach out for free counselling support. And there's, of course, the national free health line now, the teleservice. That's a text 1737. That's really good to refer people to as well if you don't have that EAP service available in your business.
And I guess it's just worth noting too that at Retail NZ, we've got some mental health guides and resources to help you manage
Yes.
those conversations with staff, and also there's a discounted access to workplace support services as well for members.
Yeah,
So
that's great.
there are resources there, and I guess I'd be encouraging everyone to sort of take those up if they need them.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and obviously, it can be tough being a manager or the owner of a business, because you've got to worry not only about the mental well-being of your people, but also looking after yourself and making sure that you can personally remain well and on top of things. Do you have any views on kind of what you should be doing if you are a manager or a business owner and you're not feeling entirely in control and settled yourself? I mean, how do you help manage those situations?
I think that's a great question, Greg. And I think often we think about our team and don't think about ourselves. And it's like anything, if we're not in our best games, then it's hard to support a large group of people in a large business or even a small business. And I think this year is particularly challenging with inflation and supply chain issues and interest rates potentially going up, well, they are going up, and the real crunch to find good people for our teams. I think the first port of call is let's reach out to each other, use our networks, friends or each other or colleagues that who are working in even other retail businesses. Let's check in on each other. All of those services, EAP and teleservices and things like that, are all available to us as leaders for advice. So do make the call yourself, even if you're working through a tough situation with a team member. You can ring those services to get advice on how to navigate that as a leader, and I really encourage that. If you've got good HR folks, reach out to them. They're always useful, and there's organisations like the Mental Health Foundation, Retail NZ to get advice, and other organisations like that. So I really encourage all of our leaders across retail to reach out early for support and not be embarrassed or concerned. It's a very normal conversation. The more we normalise helping each other, the better, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right, because that's ultimately what we all want, isn't it? Right? It's an environment where we're all happy and able to talk to each other and communicate and have a really good culture within the business that helps everyone ultimately move forward. Which probably brings us on to the broader question of culture and team culture within a business. How do you think you can build a culture where it's okay to speak up about how you're feeling or about concerns? It can be quite confronting for some people to admit that they're feeling a bit down.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think, it's a long-term game, and it really comes down to leaders being willing to have those conversations and showing that they deeply care about their people. I think we do a great job in retail because we are people businesses. Ultimately, we're the success or failure for our customers based on the team we've got in front of them every day. So I think we lead in that space, and I'm really proud to be a retailer on that basis. But I think as leaders, we set that tone. We create that environment. We create the safe place to have those conversations. And the more we're talking about it and using our morning huddles or whatever our team cadence is, the better, and deliberately leaning into that. And I think it comes down to building trust. And trust is all about doing something with that information and showing up with integrity that you're going to act on it in the way that the person is asked. So I think don't just ask, but do what you say you're going to do. And ask for input. And actually, we do a lot of work with the Mental Health Foundation and also the Health and Safety Business Leaders Forum. And there's some good resources in both of those spaces on building that culture. And interestingly, there's some data that's come out that the most important things are things like inclusion, which means having team members involved in discussions about things like wellbeing or safety at work. Thinking about leadership and the competency of leaders to operate in that space, and then having a real sense of, they call it organisational justice, but that's technical HRE speak. What it really is a feeling of fair treatment. So do people in the business feel like people are treated fairly? And you get kind of those fundamentals. There's a couple of extras in the Health and Safety Forum report, but it comes back to good leadership, fair treatment, being a good employer, involving your people, asking questions and having great dialogue. And that's the recipe for good culture. It doesn't matter if it's well-being or any aspect. it creates an environment where people feel safe to raise concerns and talk to each other and help one another.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as leaders of businesses, we need to be really cognizant of the fact that people do have concerns. Life can be challenging, and it's important that people have a safe space or feel safe in speaking up. So absolutely.
Yeah. Just to build on that too, Greg, I think gone are the days that we expect people to leave whatever's happening at home at the door. That's simply not reality. I think we're much more aware of that now in terms of, supporting people to be awesome at work means supporting people with what they need, full stop. And having people feel that work is part of life, it's not separate. And I think we do a great job of that in retail. We know our people well. We're with them every day. We know we're people businesses. So, really think we do lead in that space. But I think we can probably be a role model to other organisations or other sectors, and having that fundamental belief that, it's all one and the same.
Absolutely. And I think we've come a long way over the last 20 or 30 years in New Zealand.
Absolutely
in
right.
Embracing that kind of whole person approach to work and life, which is really good.
Yeah.
So just tell us a bit more about some of the culture at Mitre 10. LinkedIn has been covered in orange lately, I've noticed. So what does it mean to you and to those who work for you and in your business to be a team member in orange? What are kind of...
Yeah, great question. I'm glad you noticed that. We literally, like every retailer, there's no such thing as a silly idea in how to drum up recruitment, and get seasonal team members in. So we have painted LinkedIn orange as much as we can over a couple of weekends. And that's because we need seasonal people, and good people know good people. So using our networks is smart. Speaking for myself, I have immense pride in being part of a much loved Kiwi brand with real history here. Our businesses are owned by local members. As you said at the start, we're a cooperative. So all of our stores are owned by local people. And by far the majority, in fact, I'd say almost all of those people are in their businesses working every day. And that creates an enormous sense of purpose and real culture in our stores. So I'm really proud to be CPO and support the teams to be even better every day. But as you know, from Mitre 10 brand, we do a lot in the community. So all of our Helping Hands projects, we've had Project Playground on the go over the last year and more to come in that space. So really giving back. So yeah, and immense pride. You can see the orange. We wear it here in our support centre really proudly. And it's a great team to be involved in.
Yeah, and that work in the community must be a really important part of helping build that team culture and giving people a sense of pride in the brand.
It absolutely is. I think it's the same with any kind of team building or project like that. It's as much about giving to the community as it is about building a team culture where everyone mucks in and helps out. And I think it's part of working and living in local communities. And I was reflecting, actually, we've been in a very unique position in Mitre 10 where through COVID we've grown as a business. I'm sure you're like every other Kiwi, when you're in lockdown, you painted the fence or you did the garden or you did some work on home because those were the four walls you were looking at a little bit too much during COVID. And we don't take that privilege lightly, that customers really used our services and came and shopped with us. And that's meant we've grown by almost 1,000 roles, we think, over the country. So to be able to offer 1,000 more jobs to Kiwi is super important to us. And as I say, a responsibility we don't take lightly, so we give back in our local communities.
Yeah, and that's fantastic to hear that growth story. And certainly COVID, for those of us who weren't on the front lines of trying to deal with government, was an opportunity for people to get out and deal to some of those things at home. Has that flown through, do you think, into your sort of casual recruitment as you move into the Christmas period? Are you finding that people are keen to come and work for the brand, or are you finding it pretty tough to find?
Yeah, I think it's mixed, Greg. It would be fair. I think for our support office roles, we are in that privileged position of being a Kiwi brand that's much loved, and there's a real impetus to come and work for us. So we've been very lucky in that space. Retail, it depends on what part of the country you're talking to. Obviously, Auckland and in some parts, it's incredibly competitive for the same group of people, and that's tougher. And in other parts of the country, we offer stable employment because we're a successful business, and that's a real plug for us, a real advantage we have. And as I say, a privilege we don't take lightly, because we know there's a lot of retailers who don't have that stability right now. So yes, it's a bit mixed, hence the crazy things. I've been challenged to do TikTok for an advertising campaign. I'm not sure I'll quite get there this year. It's a bit hairy for my age generation, but we might have to think laterally. It's tricky. We're all competing for the same group of students, aren't we, for our seasonal workforces?
Absolutely. And look, their well-being obviously is really important when they come in as casuals. And I guess just looping back to that broader question of well-being, what things do you have in your well-being toolkit that others could add to their own? And we've got some sort of top tips for thinking about well-being for your employees.
Yeah. Great question. Aside from doing all the basics like your rostering and making sure you've got, as I say, well for me to say, the right number of people, that's challenging right now, and that's kind of the first place I would be focusing. I never shy away from being mum, and I talk to that in that language. I'm going to be your mum for a moment, but that's my job. Things like exercise, things like good nutrition, staying hydrated with good water, getting decent sleep are really important. And I know as a retailer, we tend to revert to the caffeinated drinks and the chocolate bars and the energy stuff to get us through a long shift. Actually, it doesn't do us any good. So I tend to say, look, I'm going to be your mum for a minute and do that. And providing healthy snacks and lunch spaces is a better idea than chocolate and caffeinated drinks, as I say. So come back to those basics at this time. But some of the things we work on a lot in Mitre 10 are two things, and if you don't mind me holding up bits, this is a little flyer that we've created from the Mental Health Foundation's 5 Ways to Wellbeing. They are very useful strategies to have a think about in your business. Have I got something that ticks in each box? Connecting, being active, keeping on learning, taking notice, and giving. And giving at Christmas is a perfect opportunity to tick that box. Get involved in a local charity or collecting for a food bank or something like that. Giving to others is a really important aspect of building mental health and wellbeing. So that's one thing. The other thing we're focused on, particularly in our support centre, is actually coming back to the core. Rather than think about all the extras we might put on top, the apps or the fun things, we do that as well, of course, is actually how is work structured? Have we got enough people to carry out the work that we have in mind? How do we do things from a process point of view? And the Business Leaders Health and Safety Forum has a really good booklet that we keep calling the Pink Book, but it's on their website, Protecting Mental Wellbeing at Work, and it includes some checklists to actually go through with a team, or get a team to do it themselves, to think about and reflect on how is their work structured and how can we improve it, and that's root cause. So you can do all the fun things on top, which keeps people motivated and having some fun, and smiling and laughter is a really important part. But do come back maybe in the new year to actually, how is my work structured? How is my roster built? Have I got the right people in the right place? Because you won't have the best, most well workplace unless you come back to those core fundamentals, would be my challenge to everyone. Yeah, so good resources out there. Yeah. That's helpful.
Excellent. Yeah, no, look, that's really useful and really good to hear, I think, from a big cooperative like Mitre 10 about how you're thinking about some of these issues, particularly as we head into that busy season. So look, Celena, thank you very much for your time. Great to have you here. Great to have you sharing your expertise. Really appreciate it. And I wish you all a busy festive period ahead. And I hope you and your teams get to put those wellbeing tips into practice.
Thanks very much, Greg, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.